Good morning. It's Victoria Lorient-Fabish. Welcome to Courageous Conversations. I'm sorry, a little late. I just dropped a big bottle of water just before coming on here live, so things just happen. And I just wanted to welcome you. I'm a holistic psychotherapist, a registered psychotherapist, and please let me know that you're here. I'm going to do a little sharing, and we're going to talk about a courageous conversation about letting go. What is that like? In the world of therapy, we do a lot of trying to put relationships together and making sure that relationships survive. And it's interesting because I'm just going to do a little sharing, and I will continue on this interesting piece. But if you are joining us, please share as well, because there is a lot of good stuff, good nuggets of gold that I'm about to share with you. And I feel like you will benefit others if you also share this. And so that's what I'm doing a little bit of sharing, putting it on my page, putting it on my group, Courageous Conversations, which I hope that you join me at Courageous Conversations. So here we go. Let's talk a little bit about what it means to look at a relationship in a very honest way, in a very, very real way, in which you start to see possibly some cracks, some need for change. And I find that people, like in my business as a psychotherapist, I'm looking to good morning, Wendy. Hi, welcome. I'm looking to put relationships together. That's very much, I'm always looking for where's the hope, where's the light, where's the good piece in this relationship, and let's blow some air into that so we can make it live, and we can make it grow, and we can make it survive. And I fight like a warrior if the people in my office want to fight with me to save the relationship. If I detect that we're not all on the same page in terms of our vehemence, our desire to save a relationship, I'm not gonna fight as hard. And one of the biggest, most courageous things I've ever seen people do, and that I've seen myself do, is kind of call it when this relationship is just like not doing it. And I have been known in the office to say, like, it would be, hi Linan, welcome, that it might not be the best relationship to save. That we may be throwing a lot of good money after bad, and maybe we want to put our energies into helping you come apart. That I have been known to say that, because I'm not one of these therapists that will just take your money. It's definitely, I'm busy, so it's like if I'm seeing that the situation is destructive, or people really one or both, but usually it's one or the other, don't want to be there, I'm not going to feed the illusion that we can save this thing. And so part of a courageous conversation is really, I'm just going to lower my fan here. Part of a courageous conversation is really having the balls to look at a relationship and say, hi there, Dawn. Nice to see you. Nice to see everyone joining. Please share this as you come on and let me know you're here, because I would love to see you and love to know that you're here. But it's something very important, I feel, to have the balls to look at a relationship and say, this thing is done. I'm very much a believer in long-term relationships. I myself am in a very long-term marriage and a long-term relationship. And the reason we stay is because we both work at it. We both really, really tend to the health of the relationship. And I feel that that's the only way a long-term, whether it be a friendship or it be a marriage or it be a business partnership, any kind of partnership, it's not going to happen unless you work at it consistently and have both people willing to engage in rules, in discussing rules of engagement. And it's hard when one person is not up for that. when one of the people is not up for that, either because they don't know how to fight, they always go dirty, people fighting dirty, and because they're so in their defense of things, they can't own their shit. They can't own that they've made a mistake. They're overly sensitive to criticism. So there's this defensiveness that comes up where we can't even work with there's nowhere to go. Because to me, a long-term relationship, if you want to keep your partnership, your marriage, your friendship in the long term, accept that it's going to change, that there's going to be, changes to the dynamics. And you may, and also accept that there's going to be a lot of work, and it's not just going to be fabulous long term. And people are always surprised, oh, it's too much work. If it's too much work, then we need to break up. I'm like, well, maybe. It depends on the work. If the work is simply to establish rules of engagement, how to fight, buttons that we don't push in each other, expressing love languages, being close with one another, all these things, reaching out versus just letting people just kind of go off in their own sort of obliviousness to each other. No, going, hey, I need to appreciate the people that reach out, appreciate those people. There's a lot of people going, this is just so important. I find that people dismiss those who reach out as somehow to be needy. I'm like, listen, let's value the people that have the courage of reaching out, whether it be in a friendship, yes, Wendy, in a friendship, in a marriage, in a relationship, girlfriend, boyfriend, girlfriend. It doesn't matter. It's human beings, by the way, human beings in a relationship, business partnership. It doesn't matter. The person who does a lot of the reaching out, I want to praise that person, because that's a person that's not letting this thing die. Yet, I want to also say, is there a moment in time when it is time to let it go? So that's one aspect of this conversation. But the other is having the courage to really honor when the thing changes. Good friends, and then there's a rift, and then or a fight, and then forevermore things are different. And that doesn't mean that the relationship is bad. It just means that things are different. It means that there's less expectations of one another, possibly. It means that there are buttons that need to never be pushed again in that way. So that means that there's some more carefulness that there wasn't prior to the fight. Or in a marriage, things occur, people start to have children. As soon as you start to have children, it becomes really tough to maintain the intimacy, maintain the, you and me are the couple, and we're on this planet on our own, and we're sexy and fabulous, and then, there's 2 kids or 1 kid or whatever it may be. You gotta really work at the intimacy, but also understand that there's a change now. There's something different, and so more effort needs to be had. And people are always like, oh, well, I thought it was just gonna. No, it's not I thought it was just gonna. It's never gonna just. It's gotta be worked at. I so many times in my office, the classic scenario is 10 years married, they were together 2-3 years, then they had a couple of kids, and then we're into year 10, and they're not having sex, they're not putting any effort into one another, or conversely, a friendship that we were in our 20s, we never had to work at this, now we're in our 30s and it's so hard, and they end up in my office because they don't want to lose the friendship, but they're like, oh, why is it so hard? It's like, listen, human interrelationship experiences are tough. It's a lot easier to just isolate and say, oh, I don't want to bother with all that drama. It's a lot easier, but you got to really decide, I'm going to work at it. And you got to honor that there are changes that need to be respected so that there can be a real acceptance of the new normal. The new normal has to be honored and respected. And people who don't honor change as a good thing, I think it's kind of problematic, because there's such a stagnation in the energy. I feel that stagnation needs to be shaken up and really, really, really listened to. Like, let's just go, okay, like we're stagnating. Why are we stagnating? Well, because we're tired, because we see that there's changes happening and we don't want to confront them and we're afraid. No, face it, look at it, shine a light on the monster and understand that we have an opportunity in a relationship to go, okay, we got something new here. Let's honor that. Let's have the courage to honor the new and not run away from it. Let's do something with it. And I'm going to tell you right now, the people that honor that there are changes afoot, that it's not just the same-o, they have a better chance of having a relationship last into the long term. And I encourage people to be brave enough to look at what's happening in the relationship. And I speak from whence I myself have to learn. I myself find in relationships that become more laborious, work-oriented. I'm like, oh, it's too much. No, if they're important to you, you got to work at it. You really, really do. And you got to honor that there's a change. There is a change that has occurred. And then the other piece that I want to just say is, when is it ballsy enough to call it a day with the relationship? That's the other thing. I'll tell you when there's persistent attempts at working at it and one or both don't want to work at it, or when there is a tremendous amount of shaming behavior. I find that when there's shaming of the other person, putting the other person down, and the person who is shaming is called on it, and the person who does the shaming says, I don't care, I still am going to speak in these ways, we have a problem. That becomes toxified, and then you need the courage to extricate yourself. And then a lot of people, by the way, don't. They don't. They just stay in the dynamic because it's familiar. You know, better the devil I know than the devil I don't. And so fear of alone, or fear of unknown, or fear of, fear of what other people might say or do or think, and I have told couples that persistent toxic behaviors, and funnily enough, they still show up in my office, and I'm like, this is really toxic, and there are new ways to do this, and let's show you other ways to talk to one another. Where is the shaming behavior coming from? And the person's like, well, I don't know any other way to shut them down, or whatever it is. They're afraid to be intimate, they're afraid to be vulnerable, they're afraid to expose their truth, and yet even with a ton of therapy, they're just persisting in the behavior. There's a disdain for one another. And good morning, Amy. And when there is a disdain for one another, I feel that you're almost at the end. You're at the brink of the end when you almost have disgust and disdain for one another. And, I'm not going to say there's no hope, but there's only no hope if the people involved in that dynamic aren't sort of hands in the air going, okay, I'm going to stop. I surrender. I give up. I don't want to do this anymore. Until you do that and you're still in in that kind of toxic patterning, there's nothing a therapist can do, even a good therapist, that can, like, I'm pretty strong in my office with people, and I'll call people on behaviors and I'll gently coax them toward new behaviors. But if people aren't practicing the lessons and the learning, and they persist and they've sort of got this agenda, or I detect narcissism in one of the people where they refuse to see that they have any part in the dynamic, whoa, I will call that. I will say that this may not have a lot of legs, going forward. And that's courageous. And I ask people to be courageous themselves when they are assessing certain things. The last ditch efforts in a couples therapy session, whether it's friendship, partnership, or marriage, or boyfriend, girlfriend, girlfriend, doesn't matter, human beings in relationship, if they're in a dynamic that is refusing to change, or is so entrenched in such history of wounding, have the courage to let it go, because there's so much more on the other side. There's so many more exciting, or not even exciting, healthy, or try being alone. That's pretty courageous, and I'm not saying alone to be isolated, because that's not healthy, but being alone to really self-assess, take some time, work with yourself, love yourself, build yourself up, heal from the traumas, and then re-engage with other people again, and other relationships again. And I'm not saying any of this is easy, and I'm not saying any of this is simple. It's courageous. It's brave. It's, important to call a relationship in its changes or when it's at its last legs. And the only way to pull a relationship back from the brink is radical acceptance of what is here, and then a tremendously courageous decision to hammer out new rules of engagement and to honor them as if they're their last glass of water, if you want to save that thing. And I really know that there are tremendously difficult, I think of a case study of a couple that has, real estate, children, family, obligations, money, entrenched, yet they are so toxic with one another. And they stay together because of all these things. And my job has been to simply hammer out a way that they can even coexist, because separating it would become so financially and legally traumatic. So we literally agree to just have a coexistence, and we develop rules. And that was just, I admit that that's like a really, really rough thing, because these people are refusing to leave, yet they are refusing to stay healthy. And yet they want to be in this therapy office. So my job is to be very real with them, and very, very real with them. So here's a tip though. How do you know that something has changed in the relationship? Well, you feel differently. You don't feel as relaxed. You don't feel as, and this is not reasons to leave. This is reasons to recognize that there are changes. So you don't feel as relaxed. You don't feel as happy to be around that person. There is a niggling energy of downness, possibly. And also there's a feeling of, I can't really completely be myself. And I don't believe that these are reasons to leave necessarily. I don't see toxicity in this. I just see that there's a need to have some courageous conversations, because things are changing. And we need to honor that there's a change. And having the courage to really see that and not just be oblivious to it. Not just be the frog, slowly boiling to death in warm water that's getting hotter and hotter and hotter and hotter, right? But also, how do you know it's time to leave a toxic relationship? Very simply, there's a lot of shaming, there's a lot of blaming, there's a lot of refusal to see their part in it, there's a lot of not taking responsibility, there's a lot of I don't really care what you feel or think, there's a lot of disregard. Oh, I'm disconnected, now we reconnected. There's a lot of addiction. So there is and yes, Amy, there are no boundaries. And so these are reasons to potentially begin to say, okay, we've given this a lot of effort, and yet nobody wants to really, really put the deep effort in to really change the engagement. And there's narcissism perhaps, and so that becomes an untenable working situation. So it's time to call it a day and be courageous and brave enough to leave something that's toxic. So that what gets me up in the morning, and it's what I tell people all the time, is that you are not perpetuating cycles of dysfunction and impacting children, impacting people around. These are you're not having multi-generational dysfunction. What gets me up in the morning is knowing that the work I do prevents multi-generational dysfunction. And if that's what's happening, have the courage to stop the cycle of dysfunction. Decide that the buck stops with you. Decide that the dysfunction stops dead in its tracks because you've noticed it and you've chosen to not just let it exist. That's courageous. That's a courageous conversation that you have with yourself, that you have with another, and that you bravely live out. And that is what my challenge is to you. Okay? I am wishing you a fantastic day. Please join my group, Courageous Conversations, where we have special moments together and where it is support of other people. And let me know different things that you want me to speak about in these Courageous Conversations. There was a question posed in the group the other day, which I will address in a video shortly about friendships. And I want to just say, have a blessed day of courage to be yourself, courage to live out your purpose, and be nice to yourself and be nice to others. And you can find me on visualizationworks.com, which is my website, and of course, Courageous Conversations. There's the page, which I'd love you to like, and there's the group, which I'd love you to join. Mwah. Have a brilliant day, and keep having those courageous conversations. Bye for now.